Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all here in this session at TNV Academy. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our eminent speaker, Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman today, who is going to talk to us about ISO 21001 standard, which is also known as Educational Organization Management System. Mr. Sitaraman will discuss this topic in detail with some real-life examples he has experienced in the industry today. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Sitaraman, has done his post-graduation in chemistry from Annamalai University, India. He is a lead auditor in ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, and 50001 standards. He has an industrial experience of around 30 plus years in field of manufacturing of non-ferrous alloys, lamp components, primary and secondary batteries, and has worked in countries such as India, South Africa, and Oman. He has been imparting training to a number of organizations, entrepreneurs, and executives on various topics related to ISO standards and their certification and implementation. It was just a brief introduction of our guest speaker today. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Srinivasan Sitaraman. I may request Mr. Sitaraman now to please start the session on ISO 21001 standard.
A very good evening to all of you present in this webinar, and thank you once again to TNV Academy for giving me this opportunity to host this webinar on Introduction to ISO 21001 2018 Educational Organizations Management System. So it's very interesting one because this is the first standard for educational institutions exclusively for them. So that's why it will be interesting for us to see, because we all done our schooling and all that time these standards were not there, but now for the 21st century skills, it's very important that the educational institutions are getting a standard methodologies, so that the society of people who are going to come out of the schools will be a much more developed, well-rounded individuals in the future, contributing to the country's development. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to introduce about the ISO also, because this is a standard first time for the educational organization. So some of you may be getting exposed to the ISO for the first time. So that's why I would like to give a brief introduction about ISO before going into the specific standard. This ISO, this International Organization for Standardization, established in 1947. And its headquarters in Geneva. There are 165 countries members of ISO. India is also one of the permanent members. We are basically representing the ISO. Our Bureau of Indian Standards is the official representative of India in the ISO technical committees and other forums. ISO is mainly engaged in publishing standards and then developing standards. So they are not into certification. There are various other bodies like accreditation bodies, certification bodies who are doing this activity. ISO is a non-profit organization. Their aim is to develop standards and improve globalization of standard practices across the world. That's the main aim. And there are various technical committees within the ISO where these standards are getting developed. For example, TC 176 is the technical committee for ISO 9001 standard, which is the most popular of all the ISO series of management system standards. So this was the first one introduced in 1987. Then there are various other standards introduced. TC 232, Technical Committee 232, is involved in developing the standard for educational organizations. So that's the standard we are going to discuss today, ISO 21001. Okay, these standards are revised every 5 years. There will be always new development coming in. For example, 2015 we had ISO 9001. This 21001 was released in 2018. So already there are a lot of advanced features introduced in this standard, which is better than ISO 9000 standard and is focusing on educational organizations. So like that, as the time passes, there are a lot of new developments coming in. So as and when the revisions happen, these things will be introduced in the standards as a regular feature. So if you do not revise or you do not modernize the standards, it is going to be obsolete and nobody is going to follow them. So that's why we have to keep up with the developments happening across the world. Okay, the main aim of this ISO is promoting development of standardization across the globe and facilitates international exchange of goods and services. So basically anywhere ISO 9000 certified, you have a confidence that the goods and services offered by the organization are going to be similar. Same way ISO 21000 certification by any institution, whether it is in Gulf countries or in Europe or in India, you can expect similar systems in place. May not be the same standard of education, but systems will be similar, so that according to the price band and the other criteria, whatever services you are getting, it will be standardized throughout the organization. So that's very important. Okay, and the certification is valid for 3 years. So that's why we say validity of certificate is 3 years, subject surveillance happening every year, where certification bodies will come and check whether the systems are as implemented, being maintained, or it is just not being maintained the same way. That's why surveillance audits are done once a year. So this is very brief about ISO. So now we will look at ISO in a nutshell. Suppose you are all starting new, you want to know what is ISO. So in educational organizations, this is very important to know why we need to have ISO first place. So there are 3 things we need to remember. One is document what is being done. That means a documented system. I know in the school there will be so much of documentation will be there, the exam question papers and worksheets, and there are so many syllabus, curriculum, all those things are documents. If you do not keep it in document, imagine there is so much of attrition rate happening in schools. Teachers move, when the husband gets transferred, they also move away. So because of that, people are changing all the time. So the systems, if they are not there, our documentation is not there, it's going to be very difficult for newcomers to get into the groove of the things. That's why a documented system is very important. It preserves organization knowledge for posterity, so that there is a standard systems being developed and it is documented. So whatever teacher is there or not, the new teacher comes, already systems are in place. So you just have to carry on maintaining it. So that's very important. Second thing is do what is documented. If you have developed a worksheet format, if you have developed a question paper template, everybody should follow that. Then only there will be uniformity. Otherwise, it will be chaos. Like for a particular grade, all subjects, there should be uniform type of question paper. How many marks, maximum marks, like that, everything should be standardized. So that when you do the percentage calculation and progress reports, it will be easy for assessing the performance of the students or learners. Very important. So consistency is very important, and everybody does the same way. Then demonstrate continual improvement. We cannot be doing the same thing again and again. Look for improvements, because nowadays students are getting all knowledge in the Google. So maybe they're not there in the class to gain knowledge. Maybe they need to know much more than what is written in the books. So that's where the facilitation of the educators is very important. So we have to look at how innovatively we can introduce teaching methods so that the students are benefited, rather than just giving the knowledge which is already available plenty in the internet. Nowadays the accessibility internet is so easy, people can just Google on the phone and they get the information. So we need to facilitate the learning process rather than just teaching. Teaching is kind of past way. We need to look at how can we improve our teaching methodology. For example, the last 2 years have been a challenging environment for the educators as well as learners. Because of the pandemic, people had to resort to online teaching. Almost 90% of the educational institutions were not ready for it. So it was a big challenge for them how to introduce this online teaching in the school. One is the learner is also going to be new for this, and the teachers, the educators, because they have never been exposed to this kind of online learning, that too on a continuous basis. So it was a real challenge for the education institutions. They have come out successfully. Most of them have reinvented themselves, and that's where the innovation comes in, how we remain relevant. If you are not ready for online education, you would have been already out of history. That's why we need to look at how to improve our delivery mechanism of the content. So that's where the hybrid learning methods, the online teaching methods, in addition to physical classes, we need to explore those things. That's what is called continual improvement. So these are the 3 things in a nutshell. If you want to talk about ISO, this is what is important. Then comes the process approach. This is also a bedrock of all the ISO management system standards. So when you talk of ISO, he talks about process approach. That means whatever you do in a process way. That means take inputs, process them, and then give the outputs which are going to be value adding for the next process, or even the end customer. So that's why the PDCA cycle is very important. What is PDCA? That is plan, do, check, act. So in a planning, in an educational organization, what is involved there? Educational organization management system policy. Like a quality policy, the school also, organization also has to have a policy which will be driving the entire workforce towards achieving the objectives and the policy in future. So that is what. And then internal external issues they have to consider, where the school is located, what are all the kind of environment around that, what type of social strata of people living there, what are their needs and expectations. So all those things we need to understand. If you are putting a school and if you do not understand the internal external issues, it is going to be difficult for you to get the learners into admission in the school. So that's why we need to look at what are all the neighboring competitors or other institution in the place. If it is too many clutter of institutes, then you are not going to get successful because you may not get admissions happening. So we need to look at the geographical area, what are all the inputs coming in from what all the localities. So these are the internal external issues considering the organization as a school. Like any industry, schools also have got internal external issues, so we need to understand them. Then the risk and opportunities, that's what what are all the risk. If you are not able to have a very good faculty, then the delivery of the content is going to be jeopardized, and the students and the learners and their family members or the parents are not going to be satisfied. So there is a risk of people leaving the school and then going to another school where they are expecting a better this thing, because nowadays there is so much of choice available. You see, within a 5 kilometer radius there is so many schools available in a city setting, so it's very easy for people to change. So our aim should be people, students should not leave the organization unless there are otherwise their parents are getting transferred and they cannot stay in that. Be the ultimate aim of any school. Once he is getting admission, then he should complete the schooling and go away. That should be the way we should retain the learners with the organization. So we need to look at what are all the risks coming to that and what are the opportunities available. Like if you see a particular kind of course is very much in demand, we need to see how we can introduce this vocational course or anything into the organization so that we get more and more participation from the neighboring community there to enroll for those courses. So there is opportunity. So we need to understand those things. And what are all the legal requirements? When you set up a school, there are various bodies, regulatory bodies, like CBSE is one of them, ICSE is another one. So like that, now in Cambridge curriculum is also there. There are various educational boards are there. Other than that, there are various other legal requirements you need to fulfill if you are running a school. There are various right to education rules you need to follow, that if there is a person coming and asking for admission, if he is below the poverty line, we need to give certain allocation of seats. That is also a legal requirement. So like that, the educational organization have got a lot of legal requirements to follow. So we need to consider that also. Considering all that, we have to set our objectives and targets so that we can go ahead and implement them. So that's where the do part is coming. For implementing, we need to have a structure in place. The number of teachers, if the students are 500, there is always the rule, certain boards say every class should have 25 learners to one teacher, some kind of ratio. You cannot have 40-50 students in a class. It's going to be chaotic and there will be no control, and effective delivery mechanism will not be there. So like that, there are certain things. For ensuring that, we need to have a proper structure and responsibility. That means how many teachers have to be there for every subject, how many teachers, and then what are all the periods. All those things are structured. So based on that, we have to arrive at the resources required for the teaching and learning process. Then training our competence, because people come with the B.Ed degree and then they join the school. Maybe that's B.Ed is the entry qualification, but then we have to teach them how to teach the learners. Very important. That's also training. The teachers also undergo a lot of training, how to carry themselves and how to have discipline implemented in the class, because they are just coming out of some B.Ed education done from some college, but then they are facing a 40-50 students in the class. So there's going to be a lot of development happening in terms of dynamics in the class, how the teacher is interacting with the students. So it should be very moderated in such a way that the students are obeying the thing and also following the curriculum. So that's why training, awareness and competence for the teachers is very important. Not only teachers, the entire staff. There are various other office staff, as well as for early childhood development, where there are a lot of midwives and things will be there. They may not be doing any educational delivery, but they will be doing a lot of other things to take care of the kids, like some canteen and other services will be there. So how to take care of those things when small kids are coming in, what type of things to be. So everywhere training awareness is required. That's why it's just not for teachers, for the entire teaching and other staff or support staff. That's very important. Then documentation, very important in a school organization, where there are so many kind of templates have to be made. So all the 70 teachers, 100 teachers follow a similar kind of pattern, so that there is standardization in the organization. So that's why very important. Then most important is curriculum development and delivery. Suppose you are following ICSE board of syllabus or CBSE syllabus, so that will only give you the syllabus. How to disseminate the syllabus, how to deliver the subject knowledge to the students. So that is unique to individual schools. That's where some schools are really way ahead of others, because they deliver. Otherwise, ICSE, CBSE books are already there. NCERT books are the same syllabus across the India. But then you see different schools are performing much better than others, because the curriculum development and delivery of the syllabus is very important. That's where design and development comes into picture. We will talk about it later. Then admissions also, you need to admit students. That's a process. It's all happening in the do. That you are enrolling students. Now you are going to deliver the services and the products, educational products and services. So that's what we are going to do in the do part. Now we have to check. In checking, what do? We see whether we have done as per the planning or not. So we have to do performance monitoring and measurement. If the students are doing well, that's a performance measurement for teachers. So teachers, I have delivered the content, that is not 100% success. Whether the students have understood and given good marks in the examination, that's where we can evaluate whether the teacher has done his job or not. So that's why we should be evaluating through various examinations and on other assessments, summative assessments, formative assessments. These are the ways we are doing monitoring and measurement of the learner's performance. Then records and record management. All the answer sheets have to be kept for certain thing, because if there is a dispute or any re-verification, re-evaluation, we need to have those things in place. So all these records, progress reports and other marks card, everything is a record. These have to be managed properly, and that has to be ensured by the organization. Then internal external audits. Like any other management system, we also have to do audits, internal audits, like particular subject will be audited by another subject teacher, so that whether there is impartiality is there, that will be ensured. Also whether they are following the curriculum delivery mechanism across the organization in a similar manner or not. So that's what we do in the internal audit. And external audit happens during certification and recertification, as well as surveillance audits. So these are all audits happening independently, impartially, ensure the delivery and other mechanism, whatever is set in the standard, is being followed or not. Then complaints, correction, corrective action. Here we are talking complaints from interested parties, stakeholders, like parents, students are complaining that teacher is not teaching properly, or we are not understanding. Parents are complaining about fees and other facilities not there. So there will be a lot of public dealings will be there. So we need to keep all those things documented, and the proper complaint resolution mechanism should be in place. That has to be well documented. So these are all, if less complaint means the school is doing well. Also, we do satisfaction survey, whether we are doing well or not. We find out from students as well as their parents. So that's very important. So these are all the checking mechanism. And if there is any issues we find, we take correction and corrective action. So then only we can look at improvement in the organization, which is through management review. So the top management, whether it is the dean or director or chairman of the school, principals, all of them, sit together in the management review forum for once in 6 months, and then look at the performance of the school, the class and the grades, as well as the results of internal external audits, and then see what needs to be done, where we are lacking resources. Maybe teaching staff is not there in a particular subject, where the grades are going down. So like that overall view has to be taken. So when I say management, it's not only the director or the chairman, all are important here. Even teachers, I would say, is very important. They also need to participate in the review, because they are also kind of leaders, directing 30 to 40 students in the class. So they are the leader. They are showing everything. The leaders, basically the students are following the teacher and learning a lot of things in life. So they are also setting some examples for learners to follow. So that's why the management review is very important. Now in the center of it all is top management. That's where the director or dean or chairman, who is going to sign the policy, who is providing all the resources required for planning and establishing the things in the organization and doing it, and then doing the checking mechanism, that all the exams, summative assessments, everything in an impartial manner. Very important, because if you have any kind of unethical conduct in the examination, then you are going to be blacklisted. The school will not be recognized, that partial treatment is given to certain kinds of students. If they are influential, they get to know all the questions before. These are all unethical practices. We should totally avoid it in a educational organization, because all are to be treated at par, and based on their competence, they have to be graded accordingly. That's what is very important. Okay, now because you do this PDCA, every time you do, there is going to be improvement, because the mistakes are going to get lesser and lesser, because you are following a standard system and you are checking whether you are following, everybody is following or not. Wherever it is violating or deviating, we are doing course correction. So naturally those mistakes are going to be lesser and lesser. So ultimately you are going to see educational organization management system improvement happening with every PDCA cycle in the organization. The standard is acting as a wedge, so that the improvements or progress made is not going back to square one, because the standard is helping you to stabilize it and go for further improvement. This is what we call continual improvement in the educational organization. So this is a basically brief about all the management system standard, how it is applicable to EOMS also. We looked at it now. Now, objectives of educational organizations. So you see, when you want to set up an educational organization, what are the objectives which we have in mind to set it up? Okay, first we have to meet the learners' requirements. For example, if you have a product or service in any organization, customer has to be satisfied. He should come back for one more product or one more service. Then only we are going to more and more products being made. Same way, whatever school is there, best systems, everything is there, but if there is no student in the school is not going to be functional. It will be closed, because learners have to be very important for the school. The strength, the learner strength, how it is increasing over the years. So that will be possible only if you meet the learners' requirements. So that's the first objective of any educational organization. Then utilize the resources. You got a lot of teaching staff. We have to utilize the best of the ability. For one person also you need to have one teacher, but then you have 10 students also, you have one teacher. So a class strength of 25 is fixed as a maximum. So you can go up to 25. You will need the same one teacher. So you can imagine how we add more and more learners, we are able to utilize our resources effectively. Otherwise, we'll pay a lot of salaries for teachers, but our revenue for the organization will be less, because there is no enrollment happening. So to optimize the resources and utilize the resources, we need to have more and more learners enrolling, and we have to satisfy the requirements. So these are basically going hand in hand, utilizing resources. Sustainable practices and long-term success. So when you set up a school, we are not here, for 10 years, we will run till I am retiring, then we will see what happens. No institution is set up like that. We have to see long-term view. Like, a child is enrolled, and then she or he comes out after 10 years or 12 years of schooling. So the proud parents say, we have been associated with the school for 12 years because the practices by the school and the methodologies were very good, and they had a sustainable success, sustainable practices. It's not like, certain things we can do for one day, wonder, very great, but then we can't sustain it for a long time. That's why we should look for anything we do, it should be sustainable for a long term. So education institutions are there for long term, and we have to look at success for long term. Okay, that is very important. Then effectiveness. What do we do? Effectiveness of the delivery mechanism. The effectiveness will be seen in the performance of the students in the public or board exams. That's where people say 100% success rate. How you can assure it? Because you are doing a rigorous kind of assessment in your own side, so that when they face the board exam without any fear, they come out successful. So the effectiveness of delivery and the performance is also to be one of the objectives for the educational organizations. Then compliances. When you set up a school, you follow certain boards. You cannot have an independent board. There are only 2-3 boards in the state syllabus, or you can have ICSE, Indian Council of Secondary Education, or CBSE, Central Board of Secondary Education, or the Cambridge curriculum, IGCSE we call it. These are the main boards. You will see 95% of the schools are following these kind of course. So certain schools, special needs schools are there, but then they may go into open examination, where they will go open universities directly, they can appear for board exams. But otherwise, most of the schools are catering to 95% of them to these kind of 5 boards which I was talking about: state boards, ICSE, CBSE, and they have got rules and regulations. When you are enrolling, registering for CBSE, then they come and inspect the school. They have got various kind of checks and balances before giving the license to the school. So then we have to keep on meeting their compliance requirements on a regular basis. So that is one of the objectives for the thing. Then enhance performance. That is towards continual improvement. Always we have to see 100% you achieved. What is more than that? Consistently maintaining the leadership position. Then what other things we can do other than academics? There is a well-rounded development of learners is important for future, because we are not only focusing on academics, especially the new education policy which has been released in 2020 talks about skill development. So what type of other skills we can develop in students so that they can face future with confidence. So that is why enhancing performance, not only academic, overall development, personality development, and then etiquettes, and also some skills which they can take on. Even if they are not getting a proper employment, they can have their own self-employment, and then they can employ many people in their organization. So that's the way we should look at in future. So that is what is called enhancing performance. Okay, these are the main objectives. But coming to the challenges faced by educational organization in the current scenario, what are all the challenges we are facing? Rising expectations of interested parties. Now, parents and learners have a lot of expectations, because, as I said earlier, knowledge is already available. So much of knowledge. There are Byju's, there are online platforms available, plenty of knowledge. So when the student comes, like a brilliant student comes to the schools with all the knowledge already, so you need to meet his expectation and exceed his expectation when you give the curriculum delivery. So because of the rising expectation, especially in the last 2 years, because of the pandemic, people have access to online knowledge. Everybody is easily having access. Because of that, the knowledge they've gained is much more than what is in the textbook, maybe what you are going to deliver. So you need to facilitate how can I channelize the knowledge for the learner and improve his performance. That's what is the expectation from interested parties and learners both together. And maintaining quality of education. So that is also one of the challenges. So suddenly, well qualified and experienced teacher is leaving because husband is transferred, or maybe she is retired or he is retired. Then a new person coming in, the same kind of quality cannot be delivered unless there is a standard recruitment mechanism where they get the best of the talent for the school. So still there will be a gap. So the same quality maintenance is a challenge in the organization. That is also there. Then ensuring safety, physical and emotional well-being of learners. So after 2 years, now schools have opened, people have come, some of them are coming first time to school, some of them last 2 years they're used to online learning, they're coming in, and then a lot of safety issues and emotional things will be there, because they are used to a home environment. Suddenly they are coming into a competitive schooling environment where they are facing after a lot of gap, like 2 years is a long time. So there will be a lot of things will be there, emotional well-being and safety. They're basically, they are not used to certain things, suddenly they are exposed to this. We need to ensure the safety of students, because we do all this indemnity form and all, but still school has got the responsibility to ensure safety, because there is physical education, young blood, they will be always, wanting to experiment. That time they may end up injuring themselves and others. So that is why it is very important to ensure. That's a big challenge. You need to have, we have seen many times people go on excursions. All the time I read in the paper that the selfie taken in very dangerous spots, and they fell, and then they are washed away by the water, either in the sea or in the waterfalls, like that we see. So what will be a bad image on the organization because of this one news coming in the paper, in the media? And what about the interested parties, their parents? So they will have all the kind of allegations against the school. So that's why safety more important than academics, I would say. Ensuring safety is the biggest challenge for the educational organizations. Providing adequate facilities based on the number of students. We need to have all the basic facilities like toilets, and it should be clean all the time and accessible for all the different kinds of people, a small toddler to big man. We need to have accessibility. That is very important. And if there is a special needs for certain kind of challenged, physically challenged students, we need to provide that also. That's a basic infrastructure and facility. That's a challenge. Implementing standardized practices, that's what they are challenge they are facing. So they want to go for ISO standard, because standard practices means across the board, all the classes, all subjects, there will be a standard kind of curriculum delivery, so that we can expect at any point of time what is the percentage of syllabus covered, everybody is following it. So once you standardize it, it will go in a clockwork precision. So that is why it is a challenge for the organizations. Once they implement, it is going to be successful organization. Ensuring competence of educators. So a lot of people come and they say they've got so much experience, and then when they give the interview, somehow they pass, but when they face the class, you see the kind of gaps in their competencies coming up. So we need to look at how can we ensure competency. That's why normally teachers also have to go for training. Some amount of time has to be left, like Saturdays or weekends. Some kind of training should be organized for teachers to assess their competency and fill in the gaps. So that is very important for better performance of learners. Okay. Some teachers are there, they feel they have done a best job, but ultimately the proof in the pudding is whether the students have understood whatever was talked about. That is why it is important to understand the competence levels. Regularly updating curriculum, to in line with the developments happening. Like nowadays, the National Education Policy 2020 has come. So now we have to update all our curriculum. A skill-based curriculum we have to come up, because that has been passed in the parliament. So now every school is changing the curriculum to suit the needs of this NEP. So that is why it is also a challenge, where what is the gap, what we need to do to update the curriculum. So that's one of the challenges. Then providing skill-based education. That's again a NEP point I am highlighting here. National Education Policy wants skill-based education. So how are we going to provide it? It's not just academics. There are various other skills, like various skills like hands-on skills, which they can survive even if they are not able to get into some proper employment. They will have a skill which will give them employment. So that is skill-based. Then in compliance of legal requirements. If you have a legal violation, schools will be closed. Nowadays, this prevention of sexual harassment, lot of schools have faced flag during the online. There was so much of irregularities happening, and legal requirements have come in place. We have to ensure those things are strictly adhered to ensure the school is above all these kind of violations of regulations. So that's why it's a challenge for the educational organization. Reducing attrition of teaching and non-teaching staff. So only teachers should be moving out of school for transfer or for retirement, those kind of thing. Any other thing, is going to be attrition for the teaching and non-teaching staff. If they remain with the school, it is going to be good, the continuity and standardized practices, and the knowledge will be within the organization. So too much of attrition means the standard of education will go down, and the students will start complaining that the teacher what we have got now is not the same as before, and they may tell the parents, and parents will come and complain. So it's going to be a challenge for the organization how to keep the talent within the organization and maintain it. So that is also one of the challenge. Adopting risk-based approach, because they are facing this first time this kind of standard where we are talking risk-based thinking. What can go wrong and what we need to do to prevent it from happening. So this is what is ISO talking about from 2015 onwards. So for educational organization, this will be a new concept because they have never faced ISO before. So that's why adopting this risk-based approach is also a challenge for them. They need to accustom to this one. Then coping with the frequent changes in technology, like 2 years, we have seen how online education has revolutionized the whole thing, and many schools were not able to cope with the challenges. They did not have the infrastructure. Because of that, they had a lot of students leaving. I can study better at home by looking at my Google, and your online content delivery is very bad. So these kind of things, a lot of teachers lost jobs because students were not there. So that is very important. If you are having cutting edge technology in your curriculum delivery, definitely you are going to retain the talent as well as the learners. Ensuring inclusive practices. That means the entire community has to be included. Like, we will not take these kind of people, or we will not have some kind of, segregating practices should not be there. We have to include everything, inclusive practices. That has to be ensured. So that everybody gets a equality in treatment in kind of education. So that is again a challenge for the organization. Maintaining confidentiality of data, their marks card, their progress reports, we have to keep it confidential. So we should not just distribute everyone. It should be only for the student and their family members. So this kind of confidentiality of data, which was earlier 27,000 is a separate standard, but they have included those kind of parameters also into this 21,000 standard. That's the beauty of it. 9,001 doesn't talk about confidentiality data, inclusive practices, but here 21,001 talks about confidential with data for the learners' progress and other things. Regular monitoring of the system. So this may not be there, and they may do quarterly, half-yearly, but we are talking about weekly monitoring. Then only things will be getting better and better. So this is again a challenge. Only if you do weekly monitoring properly, you will see better results coming in quarterly and half-yearly examinations. So that is a challenges. So now with all the challenges, we are thinking this 21,000 ISO 21,000 standard will solve the most of the problems if they go for it. A critical and continuous need for educational organizations to evaluate the degree to which they meet the requirements of learners and other beneficiaries, as well as other interested parties. Here, other interested parties, I am talking about teachers also. We need to know what are their needs and expectations, why they are leaving the organization. So we need to see what is a gap, how we can fill them, whether it is competency or a proper treat teachers, honest opinion, and there is a impartiality. All those things have to be ensured. That's why just only not focusing on learners and other beneficiaries, as well as other interested parties who are teaching and non-teaching staff. So that is very important. Then to improve their ability to continue to do so, how can we do it continually? Who are these beneficiaries? Educational organizations, learners worldwide, and all interested parties include teaching and non-teaching staff and other support staff, all of them. These are the beneficiaries. ISO 21,000 focuses on the specific interaction between an organization, learner, and other customers. Other customers are basically the parents, immediate family members who are sponsoring the education of the child. So that is why they need to be having the financial backup to support the learner in the school. So when you increase the fees, you need to think about the interested parties, whether they will be able to afford this. Otherwise, you may see that a lot of students are leaving the school and going and joining where they can afford that kind of fees. So these are all the things we need to be aware of. Current educational processes are becoming increasingly focused on co-creation, where the traditional customer-supply relationship is refined into a collaborative partnership. You see, it's very important. Customer-supplier I'm talking about here is teacher and learner. So that is a traditional, I teach, you learn. That was the old methodology. Now we are talking collaborative. That means we are asking the students to prepare a presentation on a topic and come and deliver the content in the class for the rest of them. So when you put the learner in the teacher's post, you can see how he is developing himself. He has to educate the whole class now. So he will also be preparing for it, and he will do a lot of research. Thereby he is increasing his horizon of knowledge. So that's what we call it collaborative partnership, where we are making kind of, flip classroom there, where teacher is sitting and learner is teaching. So teacher can see what are all the things he coming up, and he or she can fill in the gaps whenever it comes. So that is what is called collaborative partnership. The standards gives guidelines on how to deliver quality in the challenging new environment. So these guidelines, if you follow, you will be definitely coming on tops in kind of implementation and successful maintenance of the standard. Okay. So now the need for ISO 21001, the educational organization management system, is the solution for all the challenges we discussed in a couple of slides before. Okay, quality is basic to any educational organization. Quality has to be managed to be delivered consistently. You have to manage it, then only we can deliver consistently. Also, I used to say, follow the process, quality will flow. So you have a process in place, strictly adhere to the process, so that the quality will automatically happen because you are following a process. Okay. Also, another one is the 21001 ISO standard is also fulfilling the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We call it SDG. When I say SDG, immediately you should know it's a Sustainable Development Goal. There are 3 goals which the educational organizations are meeting through the ISO 21000. What are they? Quality education means whatever education we are providing to learners is of quality. That means you can be guaranteed that he is getting the skills what is necessary for face the future, the exam called life. Second is reduced inequalities. So that is again the goal 10 says we should not have any inequality among the learners. All learners should be treated at par. Like this guy is a very rich kid, as a poor kid, nothing should be there. That's why we keep uniform. When you wear uniform, all are treated at par. So that is also one of the concept why we are having uniform in the schools, so that everybody, rich, poor, middle class, all are treated equally in the class, and that is there, reducing inequalities. Then 11th goal is sustainable cities and communities. So we develop a lot of schools and kind of infrastructure. So sustainable cities. That means one person need not travel 30 kilometers within the city to go to the school. There are a lot of good quality education institutions available in the neighboring vicinity. So we have sustainable development happening. Otherwise, it is going to be chaos. You travel 2 hours in a day. What is left of you that day particularly for you? So that's why we have to develop the communities and cities sustainable so they can survive on the neighboring facilities available and infrastructure rather than looking for it elsewhere. So these are very important 3 goals, sustainable development goals. Okay. Then ISO 21000 is the first management system standard for educational organization. So for 10 years before also, some schools used to go for certification. They used to go for ISO 9001. Slowly what happened, ISO 9000 is the umbrella standard for any industry you can apply, because every industry there is a customer. If it is a school, learner is a customer. If it is a hotel, the guest is a customer. So like that, customer is everywhere. But now what happened, there are sector specific standards getting developed in the last 5 years. There are various standards coming in specific to sectors, like for example 21,000 one for only educational organization, then 22,001 only for food safety, food industries. They need not go for ISO 9001, they can go for 22,000. So like that, there are specific standards developed. They are addressing only that particular sector of the industry. So for education institution, this is the first standard. Okay. Title: Educational Organizations, Management Systems for Educational Organization, Requirements with Guidance for Use. So this is very important. Since it is being introduced for the first time, what they have done along with the requirements is what you have to fulfill to get certified. With the guidance for use, they are giving like step by step, baby step guidance. If you see the standard, there are almost 20-25 pages dedicated as a guidance only. So any new person or new school going for, they can easily follow the standard itself and they can implement the systems. That's the beauty of it. Whereas ISO 9001, you may need some external consultant and all. Whereas for educational organizations, the standard itself is providing a nice guidelines for use and implementation. That's good. Then prepared by ISO project committee, ISO PC 288, now managed by technical committee. Whenever standard first time it comes, it's a project. So project committee handles. So that is PC 288. But now that it has been issued as a standard, it has been transferred to technical committee and they are managing the revisions and other things of it. 232. Published in May 2019, adopted by Bureau of Indian Standards in January 2019. So January 2019 onwards, we have got the ISO 21001 available, and it is available in the website. You can buy the standard and you can use it. It's a standalone management system standard. You need not have any additional standard associated with it. As it is, you can implement and you can also integrate if you have other standards. Applies to any organization, small school to a bigger university, it can go for it, because everywhere learners are there. Lifelong learning. So even open universities also can go for vocational institutes. So anybody, learning and development organizations, even like for example, company running, producing automotive batteries or automotive cars, they also have a learning and development program for their staff. So that learning and development department separately can go for certification. So any organization providing learner products and services, educational products and services through research and training can go for this certification, irrespective of the type, size, and method of delivery. Very important. The standard will look like something like this. This is an international standard, but if you buy an Indian standard, it will be ISO 21001, like that it will be there. Otherwise, the content is same, ditto, everything is same. Okay. So this is just for your friends. So now coming to the principles. These are not requirements. For example, in quality management system, we have 7 management principles. The whole standard is sitting on those 7 pillars of the quality management system. Same way, the educational organization management system also have got the principles, but it's slightly more than 7. We'll see that. One is focus on learners and other beneficiaries. This is what used to be customer focus in QMS. Here we are talking learners, because they are the customers, and other beneficiaries, we talked about teachers, teaching, non-teaching staff, as well as the families, parents of the learners. So these are the focus. If you fulfill what they want, they will be sticking with the school and they will also be developing themselves. So the whole organization focus, whatever we are doing, is the learner going to be happy or not? That should be the ultimate test we need to take. If it is not happy, then we have to see how we can make them happy. It is not that out of the way to please them. Within the boundaries, we have to see how we can deliver the content and other services so the learners are feeling happy and motivated to learn. That is very important. Not pampering the learners, motivating them to come to the school and learn and get benefited. So that's what should be the focus. Okay. Then second principle is visionary leadership. Earlier in QMS, it is called leadership only. But after 3 years, this 2015, we released 9001. So now 2018, they also looked at just leadership is not going to be helpful. They want to have a visionary leadership. That means a long-term vision should be there. When a person is setting up school, it is not a business for him, because he has to see what is the social contribution he is making, what type of students he wants in the future to be known for. So that is the kind of vision we are looking at. Like, people still remember their elementary school, how they learned certain things, and they come back from USA and other countries, and then they provide a lot of grants for the schools to uplift them, even for their higher education also. That's why we have to have students coming up like this. Means the vision of the organization and the top management of the organization should be such that he creates world leaders of future. So that is what is called visionary leadership. Very important. Then engagement of people. You have to, whatever vision you have mind, you have to use all the entire workforce, teaching, non-teaching staff, to realize your vision through the mission. So for that, you have to engage with the people, understand the requirements, and give your kind of vision. So they take on the vision, and then they are also motivated to achieve the vision for you, for the organization. That is what is engagement of people. It involves all the interested parties apart from learners. Then process approach. Anything you do, we do process approach. This ISO is adopted in 2000, and we have been continuing for the last 22 years. There is a lot of benefits for following process approach. They have retained it in the principle. When you follow process approach, we have already seen, when you do PDCA every cycle, you eliminate mistakes, you are naturally going to improve. Improvement should be the mantra of the organization. Otherwise, they are going to be falling by the wayside. New schools will come, learners will go there because they are getting better facilities, better infrastructure, and kind of curriculum delivery is what do you call, the smart boards and things are there. These are the technological improvements. If you do not do it, you are going to be obsolete. So that's why improvement is very important. It comes through process approach. Evidence-based decisions. That means all data is very important. Whether you are saying school is doing well or not, you need to have the pulse of it. For that, you need to collect data, the progress reports, the analysis of the performance. All this has to be done. Then only you can say how our students are doing. So gut-based, you should not take any decision. 1 or 2 students, you see everything is fine. But we have to see the school performance, individual performance. That's why individual progress reports are made and given to the learners, because they are one person we have to treat separately. So for that, the data analysis is important. How we are analyzing the data coming out of the examinations and the test, and how are you going to improve the performance, where the weaknesses are identified and improved. Then relationship management. Like school is there, we are providing services, but there are a lot of support services. Maybe some people have got outsourced canteen services or other service providers like stationery, uniforms, and shoes, everything. There are various service providers available. So we need to keep them in the good books. Means we should have mutually beneficial relationship with the service provider, so that we are able to give value addition to our learners in the ultimate aim. That should be the aim. Okay. Up to these 7 principles was already there in quality management system principles. So now another 4 principles have been added for the educational organization management system. That is because of the 3 years later this standard was developed. So you see a lot of things, and also more focused on the education sector. One is social responsibility. The leadership, whatever is in the school, should have a social responsibility also, how to uplift the community of the people around. You can't have a school and only catering to people coming from rich background, and then the neighboring community is all suffering, and people are coming from faraway places and learning there. So there is no point in it. You need to have a social responsibility to uplift the community, and what type of help you are doing for the economically weaker sections and people below poverty line, and right to education. So these are all social responsibility goals also we need to fulfill as a educational organization. Then accessibility and equity, that is also very important. It should be accessible to challenged people, physically challenged, special needs children, and also cutting across region, religion, language, culture. We should be able to give equal access for all to curriculum and our school. So that is also one of the principle for sustainable development goals. Then ethical conduct in education. That means all have to be treated at par. As I said earlier, there should not be any variation in your treatment for rich and poor people. And also ethical conduct. That means the examination should be fair and free and fair. It should not be biased towards benefiting some particular section of the learners. That is very bad. And then somehow helping students to pass the examination. These are all not ethical practices. So they are saying ethical conduct. Ultimately, this certificate is going to be for his life, for all his career. So you promote somebody who is not competent, it's going to be difficult for the future. When he is facing the real life, the skills he will be lacking. So that's why it is very important to have a ethical conduct in the education. Then data security and protection. All the data we generate, through progress reports, paper evaluation, all this has to be secured and protected, and access should be granted to the required persons only, authorized access. That is also one of the 27001 element, which is the data protection, is coming into this principle. So you see, this is like a very inclusive, taking a lot of social responsibilities coming from ISO 26001. Accessibility, equity is also one of the sustainable development goals. So this EOMS principles, apart from the 7 which is already there, 4 more have been added to make it more relevant for the educational organizations. Very important. So these are the 4 which are added, which is only specific to educational organizations management system. Hope you understand these 11 principles now. Okay, now how is this strategy for EOMS? How are you going to implement it? So that's what we have to see, the vision of the organization, the leadership, visionary leadership, where he wants the organization to go in 10 years, 20 years time, how he is going to achieve by having a mission with the employees or the staff in the organization, having a good organization culture, that is culture of development and improvement, and then include all the EOMS principles we talked about in the earlier slide, 11 principles we talked about, include all the imbibe all the principles. Then the policy has to be developed, EOMS policy, focusing on the learners and other beneficiaries. Then finally, we have to develop the objectives to achieve the policy. So the mission is to achieve the vision. So the mission will be done by the entire staff. One person cannot do it. Only vision, he can have it in his mind, the leadership. But to achieve the vision, he needs the support of the staff who will be on the mission to achieve the vision for the leadership. So how do they do it? Through the organizational culture, the principles, the policy, and the objectives will make it happen. So this is a strategy for EOMS. Now we look at this high-level structure, which is common across all the management system standard, because I said earlier, 2013 onwards, this standard structure has been in place. We call it high-level structure. So which has got a structure like a scope. It starts from there, normative references, terms and definitions used in this particular management system standard, context of the organization, which is common to any organization for that matter. Here we are talking educational organization. Leadership has to be a visionary leadership, and what all things they need to do to sustain the organization on a successful path. Then planning to address the risk and opportunities and address the learners' needs and expectations. And then the support structure, very important. What type of staff you are going to employ, because they are going to deliver the content, they are going to facilitate the services. So the entire thing is support. And then operation of the whole organization in terms of delivery of the content and assessment of the students' performance. Then performance evaluation, and finally improvement. So these are the 10 classes, out of which only the 7 classes from class 4 to class 10 are the requirements for this standard. And for any management system standard, these are the 7 classes which are requirement. But the beauty in this 21,000 standard one is, it is the guidance is given for educational institutions to follow and fulfill all these requirements. That's why the title says requirements with the guidance for use. Okay. So now additional requirements also, you see the guidance here. Annexure A provides additional requirements for early childhood education or organization providing the service. Very like a creche or small children, only pre-primary schools and Montessori kind of things, where early childhood development happens. So there are some additional requirements which is told in this particular annexure. Then annexure B outlines the principles of EOMS. The 11 principles we just saw. there is a full detail of what is visionary leadership, what is improvement, what is process approach, so that the educational organization facing this standard for the first time can understand in a better manner. Then Annexure C provides classification of interested parties. So clearly there is a table given, so it's very easily explained lucidly, so people can understand who is interested party, what is the interest, everything is nicely explained there. And then guidelines for communication with interested parties. Normally we don't see this kind of guidelines in ISO 9001. Here they are given guidelines, what is the communication, whether it is requiring some information, or whether it is conveying some information, or whether it's for checking some information. So like that they segregate this communication and they give guidelines how to communicate with interested parties. Very important. Guidance on processes, measures, and tools. Like this also helps the organization in the implementation process. They give all the guidance on what all processes are available, how do we measure the process, the KPIs they also give in this. Annexure F talks about guidelines for mapping to regional standards. Like we have ICSE, CBSE, like that worldwide there will be so many body curriculum structures will be available. How to map this standard to those curriculums is what is given as a guidelines in this Annexure F. Then Annexure G talks about health and safety consideration. You see now in 9000 we only talked about quality and products and service. Here we are also talking about health and safety of learners when they are at school, how we have to provide whatever food we are giving, hygienic food has to be given. When they play in a PE period, how their safety will be ensured, how their health when there is a kind of too much of heat and other weather conditions, how do we ensure that their health and well-being is maintained in the school premises. So these are the guidelines given there. Okay, now we look at the overview of this standard 21000. Is all the classes it put in like a house structure, but you can see the inputs coming from the left hand side. Learners and other beneficiary expectations, requirements are coming in. Then the EOMS and its processes. So we take this input and then we process them in the educational organization management system. So also from the top, understanding the organization and its context. Then the scope of the management system. These are all the things from the periphery are feeding into the management system inside, where we are doing this plan, do, check, act. You see, P planning, 6 and 7 support and operation, and then checking is performance evaluation, and then improvement is the clause 10, which is towards action. So the PDCA cycle in a way they have done it. And when there is an input, there is also an output. What is output? Results of the EOMS, that is learner and other beneficiary performance and satisfaction, products and services. So this is what is output. If the student is going to be satisfied at the end of the year, he is going to enroll for the next year. Otherwise, he is going to take TC and go to some other school where he feels he is going to get better treatment and better education. So that is why we need to be aware of it, that satisfaction of learners. So this in a synopsis, we have seen the whole EOMS here. I don't want to go into detail because of the time constraint. So now what we will see, some of the comparison, like 9001, most of the students, the organizations are aware of it. So when they implement this ISO 21001, we just need to know what are all the fine differences we need to understand. For example, the class 4. I have not talked about 1, 2, 3 because that is not a requirement. Class 4 context of the organization is same for both any industry or educational organization. Only thing, the context here would be the education needs of the learners and interested parties, and the internal external issues facing the school as an organization. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same class. You have to comply with the requirements. Under the leadership, if you look at here, it's again customer focus is the main thing in the 9001 standard. Policy, roles and responsibilities to fulfill the objectives will be there. Here everything is there. Apart from them, there is a social responsibility, which is what I talked about as a sustainable development goal. Then focus on learners and other beneficiaries. That's instead of customer, here we have focus on learners and other beneficiaries. Then special needs education. That's also being mentioned in various classes. If some particular learner has got a special need, we have to address that. We cannot ignore it and say, we cannot satisfy that, because then we are not having equality and equitable distribution of our resources. So that's why special needs education also has to be addressed by the leadership. That's why it is put along with the leadership. Okay, very important. Then under the clause 6 again, planning to address risk and opportunities. Again, pretty much same quality objectives. Here it will be EOMS objectives, and how to achieve them, and any changes if you do in the organization, the school, we need to communicate to the stakeholders, the interested parties, so that there is no chaos happening. So this is basically a similar thing. Apply to any industry, it can also apply to educational organization. There is no big change in this particular class. Coming to 7, support, where we have got again infrastructure, work environment, organization knowledge is also required for industry. Then measuring and monitoring resources. These are all same, almost here also we have got them. But measuring and monitoring resources pretty much very negligible, because you don't have any measuring instruments. Maybe in the laboratory you may have some balances and all. Otherwise, it is going to be very negligible if it is a normal school environment. But learning resources, in the libraries we are talking about, the kind of resources available, the technology support which is available, these are the learning resources. We have to specifically address them in the requirement. Okay, that is the only difference. 7.2, we are talking competence training records for normal here. Here only difference is the training to staff and also looking into special needs education. Suppose a particular student is having some special needs, we have to appoint specifically trained staff for it. We can't just put any staff to teach them, because there are some special skills required. That's why a competency on that specific needs also to be identified and provided. But records have to be maintained in both the cases. So that is where the focus is there, on training to staff to teach the learners. Very important. Then under the class 7.3, awareness of quality management system, here it is EOMS. That's all. So how you need to be aware of and what you should not do, all those things are mentioned in this. So it is pretty much same. Under communication, again, there is more guidelines given. So already we had a lot of guidelines under annexure. Here you have mentioned here, purpose, why we are communicating, and what are all the communication arrangements, like checking communication or communicating communication or information requested communication, like that various types of communication. In a clear manner, it is given to the organization so they can understand what type of communication they are doing, how to go about doing that. Arrangements are all given in the annexure. Then documented information, pretty much same, but there will be a lot of documents in the school, because there is everything has to be in black and white. We cannot have verbal instructions for students. That's why a document is very important. They can follow better. So documented information is there. In operational planning and control, basically here we are again focusing on specific for educational products and services, as well as special needs education. Here again focusing on the special need educators as well as the children with special needs. That is only addressed specifically there. Under determination of requirements for the learners and the industry customers, it is pretty much same. We have to understand the requirements, then only we can develop the curriculum accordingly and then deliver it, and then communicating the same to the students in terms of annual syllabus for examination and things like that. And then changes to requirement. If you do any change in the curriculum or syllabus, or reducing syllabus during pandemic, we know a lot of boards had cut down the syllabus because they could not disseminate the curriculum in a very short time. So those kind of changes have to be communicated to the learners accordingly. Then design and development. Some organizations may not go for design development because it may not be applicable. They may be making standard product. For example, bottled water or batteries or standard products which are having BAS standards. But there may be some organization where the design and development is applicable. But in schools and educational institutions, they are saying design and development has to be applicable, because the way you deliver the content, maybe ICSE or CBSE syllabus is same, but then how you are tailor making it for your organization. So you do a lot of design there, design the curriculum, your assessment mechanism, how do you do that? All that is a design involved in that. That's why we have to go for design and development clause also in the certification. So both educational product, service design, that is the syllabus or whatever curriculum, and the service design means how are you delivering the curriculum, the kind of educational service you are doing. So that design also has to be evaluated. Then external provider products and services, pretty much same, both are there. It's basically the outsourced service providers like uniforms, shoes, stationery materials, or even food products coming from outside. These are the only we are talking about. We need to ensure that they are evaluated and controlled properly. Under 8.5 to 8.7 clauses, again, delivery of products and services, identification, traceability, preservation of products, control of changes and release of products. This is pretty much a 9001 scenario. But here, what is the difference? We have admissions happening. That is the one process. We have to look at how we are going to conduct that process, and how we are going to measure the success of the process, because that is where we are going to see more and more students coming in. So admissions, then assessments, summative, formative assessments, recognition of assessed learning. That's where we have examinations. That is also one of the things we have to see. Special needs, again, in this class also we have addressed. So right from leadership, every class, the special needs is getting a mention. So you can imagine the equitable participation and the social responsibility of organizations to cater to the special needs people also. Protection and transparency of learners' data. This is again the data protection, which we already looked at in the EOMS, one of the principles. So it is coming there. And then apart from that, the identification, traceability, and preserving the records and all those things are same as the 9001 standard. Okay. And then the performance evaluation, checking mechanism. Here we have monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. We evaluate the customer satisfaction, and we conduct internal audits and management review. Here, everything is pretty much same. Apart from that, we are also looking at the satisfaction learners. Instead of customers, looking at the other beneficiaries and staff. Very important. It's just not focusing on customer satisfaction, even the staff satisfaction and other beneficiaries, the other non-teaching staff and maybe learners as well as the parents. Okay. Handling of complaints and appeals, that also has been included, because there will be a lot of complaints coming in, whether it is a delivery of content or transport issues or staff treating children very badly. So many emotional, psychological issues. All will have a lot of complaints. Parents will have complaints. We need to have a proper redressal mechanism that also has to be addressed clearly. Then internal audit as usual, and management review also has to be done like 9001. Pretty much same. Under clause 10, improvement, non-conformity and corrective action, which is towards improvement. Again, continual improvement opportunities we are looking at and then availing them. Under 21001, it's pretty much same. We are looking at opportunities for improvement separately. Along with continual improvement, we are also looking for opportunities for separate improvement, and we are also addressing them, like new technology, new teaching methodologies, new way of delivering content, those kind of things. There are various initiatives. There are a lot of NGOs working in this field. Like, they don't want to go the traditional classroom teaching. They want to have experiential based learning, that in inquisitive learning, like question everything, why it is happening. So rain is falling means why the water drop is falling down. Something like, basic things you start questioning, you are able to have a better thinking ability. So like that, there are a lot of startups in the educational environment where they're coming up with various ideas and they're trying to implement them. That's called opportunity for improvement. So not focusing only on the marks, we are also focusing on the thinking abilities of the individual, because ultimately the EOMS is delivering a product which is not a product, which is a human being who is going to face the future with confidence and going to make the future for country. So that's why we need to look at what all ways we can improve his abilities, emotional, technical and educational, intellectual abilities, so he becomes a better human being and contributes to the society in future. So that is why we have a special need in the 21,000 standard, these things. Okay. Now, potential benefits of UOMS, what are they? Increased credibility of the organization. Once you are ISO 21000 certified, you can proudly announce it, and also it gives a lot of credibility for your organization, because there are standard practices available. Parents, interested parties, beneficiaries are being questioned, or being inquired about the satisfaction level, so they feel motivated to have a continued association with the organization. Then demonstrate effective educational management practices. So when you have standards in place, systems in place, so you will have definitely effective educational management practice. Whether the teacher is gone or some new teacher is come, there are standards already set in place. So they just have to follow it. So there is going to be systematic things happening, and management practices are also going to be there, effective. Culture for organizational improvement. So this ISO gives a the framework for improvement, because we are always looking for improvement. Every audit we have to show evidence of improvement. So it gives a culture in the organization. What can we do better than yesterday? That should be the thinking. What can I do today which is better than yesterday? So like that, everybody starts thinking in those lines. Okay. Then harmonization of other standards, like various other standards. This standard also has got the same management structure, so you can also add your environmental management system with this. You can also add other safety management system also in this. When your organization grows bigger and bigger, you can include that, harmonizing standard. Participation of interested parties. We are allowing the other interested parties to participate in the system by taking their views, by asking them the satisfaction and all. So there is a more encouragement participation of interested parties, including the staff, teaching and non-teaching staff. Stimulation of excellence in innovation. So when you are driving for excellence, naturally they will stimulate everybody to look for improvement. Not only the top management, all are looking for improvement in their own influential areas, so that overall organization is going into excellence. That is what is happening. Simply organizational excellence cannot be achieved with top management. Everybody has to contribute, for which you have to be stimulating the each and every one of the organization. Okay, with this, I conclude this presentation on 21001 Educational Organization Management System. So now we are open for questions.
I have got few questions, sir, in the chat box from the participants.
Yes.
So
Yes, sir.
I'll be going on and asking them one by one.
Yes.
Sir, one question which I have received is design and development clause required in EOMS if we follow CBSE syllabus?
As I said earlier in my presentation, there are various boards available, CBSE, ICSE. They have a fixed kind of syllabus. So you adopt that board education pattern, means you are using the syllabus. But still, how you are going to deliver the content, there will be a lot of design involved, development involved. It will be very difficult for you to justify your non-applicability of design and development to the auditors. If they are clever auditors, they will be able to find that you have design and development, but you are not put it as a requirement. So it is always advisable to address design and development also as a requirement, and address that clause in terms of procedures, documents. Basically it is not a great thing to exclude. Better to include and have all the documents in place. Whatever curriculum assessment, summative assessment you are doing, examination patterns to be specific to for your school. So you need to include design and development, irrespective of whether it's CBSE or ICSE, because if the auditor finds that you are excluded and he had got a proper justification, then you will have a non-conformance in your hand. So to avoid that, it is better to include design and development, which you are doing anyhow.
Thank you, sir. The other question which I have received is, what is the main motivation for adopting ISO 21001 standard?
Main motivation, I would say, is standardizing the teaching and other practices, because we see a lot of attrition happening in the school. New teachers are coming, and a lot of teachers moving from one place to another place. So the learners are the sufferers. When suddenly there is a change in the faculty, learners are the sufferers. So the main motivation should be have systems in place. So at any point of time, you should know that how much of the syllabus has been covered, because there is a standard way of monitoring and weekly feedback, and the syllabus, how much is covered, what is not covered. So this all will come only if you implement a standard management system, so everybody follows this. So I would think this is the best motivation, that there will be standardized systems in the organization, which will drive more and more learners towards the organization.
Thank you, sir. The last question which I have received is, can ISO 21001 be integrated with ISO 9001 standard in educational organizations?
Certainly it can be integrated, but since it has got more than ISO 9001 requirement specific to educational organization, suppose your organization already has got an ISO 9001 certification, so it's easy to upgrade to 21001. You don't have to keep both of them, because there is no meaning of having both the certification. So towards the next certification cycle, you can upgrade your standard to 21000 and fulfill the extra requirements for the 21001 standard, so that you will be continued to certify, but as a ISO 21001 standard rather than ISO 9001 certified organization.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions which was put up by the participants.
Yes.
These were the 3 questions which I received in the chat box. So we now can come to the conclusion of this particular session. It gives me immense pleasure for thanking you, Mr. Sitaraman sir, for providing us so much insights and knowledge on this particular topic, educational, the ISO 21001 standard. It's a relevantly new standard, and it's not, people around the current ISO world are not much aware about it. The way you share the knowledge and insights and the topics in detail about this particular standard were absolutely great. I hope that all the participants were usually benefited by your knowledge and expertise which you have shared on this particular topic. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving your valuable time and effort for making this webinar a successful one. I also thank all the participants for being an integral part of this webinar and putting across your questions. I hope that your questions were successfully answered. I look forward to see you all again soon, and I wish you all the best on behalf of TNV Academy for all your future endeavors. Thank you so much for being a part of this webinar. Thank you so much once again.